So technical writing in general is a very broad term. Technical communication in general is a hugely broad term. And so it varies from field to field. But for IT, which is what I was doing before, there were a lot of user guides, there was a lot of process documentation, that sort of thing. So there really wasn't any narrative elements to it. It was, you're mostly just observing these different processes and recording them and making sure that they can be successfully executed, making sure that the company has all of this documentation and, user-friendly library so that it can always be found, making sure that it's kept up to date. Whereas with proposal writing, I get to do a lot more actual writing as a term. It's definitely a lot more structured than what I was doing before as a technical writer, but it also allows me to be a lot more creative as a writer as well.
Welcome to the Knowledgebase Ninjas podcast, where 𝐭𝐚𝐤𝐬𝐿 Kumar of Document 360 finds the best SaaS self-service knowledge bases in the world and then interviews their creators. Let's get started with today's episode.
Good day, everyone. Our guest today for the Knowledgebase Ninjas podcast is Mickella Rast, proposal writer, Chenega Corporation. Hi, Mickella. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. So, Mickella, before we proceed, please help me understand a little bit more about yourself and how did you get into this professional journey and how are you enjoying it so far?
Okay, I have always really enjoyed writing. I've always enjoyed communication. I do have a dual BA in writing, or English rather, and communication. I have an MS in technical communication. And when I was initially looking for jobs, it seemed like it was natural to become a technical writer. So I started out actually in the IT field, and while it did teach me a lot and I did enjoy it, after about a year, I was really looking for something new, and I just happened to stumble across the job listing for a proposal writer for Chenega Corporation. And after I looked into it and I researched it a little bit more, it seemed very interesting. So I applied, I got the job, and I've been with them ever since. And I have to say, I love it. I really enjoy it. It is not a facet of technical communication that I ever thought I was going to get into, but it is really, really interesting, and I enjoy the challenge it presents.
Great. To be really honest, I'm more curious to understand what does proposal writing means, because this is something I do not come across very often.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. You are in the majority, actually. A lot of people, when I tell them what I do, they have absolutely no idea what that even means. But to break it down really simply, the government contracts out a lot of their work, a vast majority of it actually. And when they need that work contracted out, all of these different contracting companies have to essentially bid for that work, and they have to submit proposals to the government detailing why the government should choose their company to perform all of this work. So that is my job, is to develop all of those proposals, convincing the government that Chenega Corporation is the right pick for them, that we're ideally suited for this work or ideally positioned for it, and to essentially imbue the government with confidence that we are the right choice for it and that we can do it correctly and successfully.
Oh, that sounds very interesting. Yeah, it's always a tough job to convince somebody, and especially when it's a highly competitive environment and bidding, I would guess.
It is, yes. We are an Alaska Native corporation. We're also a small business, but it is very competitive, yes. We have some big hitters out there that we've partnered with, that we've gone up against, that we've won some and lost some, and I like to think we've won more than we've lost, but it's never boring, that's for sure.
Great. Now, one of the most cliche, the most common challenges writers in federal contracting mainly face is the proposal making the cut. Did you come across them, and how did you make sure your proposal stood out from the competition?
Some of it is really great training. Obviously, when I was onboarded, I was paired with senior proposal writers who showed me the ropes, showed me some tricks of the trade. And some of it is just you have to learn over time. You have to do research, you have to study. There are trainings and certifications that you can go through that'll provide you with information on how to really make your proposal stand out and how to really weave in those persuasive elements while still being very upfront and realistic about what your company can do and what they can accomplish in the given time frame and the given budget.
Yeah.
Um, but it's certainly been a journey. That's that's true. But it's really that balance because obviously you don't want your proposal to come off as a marketing pitch or anything like that or boilerplate that you would find on a brochure. So it's really trying to strike that balance between weaving in those persuasive elements and really convincing them and, emphasizing your strengths and your discriminators and making your company stand out while also getting down to brass tacks and being succinct and concise about what your company can accomplish, which the government also really appreciates. Most government reviewers don't have much tolerance for fluff language or anything like that.
Straight to the point, yeah.
Yes.
Right. Now, there's technology improvements or improvisations in all the fields. So how has the recent technology trends impacted proposal writing careers?
Proposal writing, pretty much like every other field right now, we've really had to learn how to work with AI.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's the biggest advancement that's going on right now. And even though it is certainly a benefit and a boon, it is also a challenge to figure out how we're going to integrate it into our processes. Because we are working with the government, that also provides sort of an extra challenge because we're working with a lot of proprietary information. We're working with, controlled and classified information. And there are concerns about security and privacy and things of that matter. So it took a lot of working with these individual AI companies to find a solution that was going to be realistic for us and actually meet our needs while also making sure that it wasn't going to present a security risk to any of our information, but also any of the government's information as well.
Nice, nice, very interesting. I'm just so curious to know. It's slightly different to what you normally hear, right?
Yes.
So that makes me ask you this question. So how does this transition look for you from technical writing to proposal writing?
So technical writing in general is a very broad term. Technical communication in general is a hugely broad term. And so it varies from field to field. But for IT, which is what I was doing before, there were a lot of user guides, there was a lot of process documentation, that sort of thing. So there really wasn't any narrative elements to it. It was, you're mostly just observing these different processes and recording them and making sure that they can be successfully executed, making sure that the company has all of this documentation and user-friendly library so that it can always be found, making sure that it's kept up to date. Once you get the bulk of the writing out of the way, it's a lot of administrative and management work. Whereas with proposal writing, I get to do a lot more actual writing as it turns out. And of course, it's also incredibly structured because all of our proposals are guided by government requests for quotes or requests for proposals, which are RFPs or RFQs, as the case may be. And so it's definitely a lot more structured than what I was doing before as a technical writer, but it also allows me to be a lot more creative as a writer as well. Again, trying to find that balance between convincing the government why they should choose us while also, extolling the many virtues and the capabilities of our company.
Nice. Just a question that came to my mind is, when you bid, there'll be a lot of variations, right? Like so many different variations of questions and proposals. So how do you manage, or does it come through experience?
Some of it is experience. Obviously, we don't know what the proposals from the other companies look like. Once you submit it to the government, you kind of just have to cross your fingers and hope for the best and really rely on the great work from yourself and the rest of the team as well. Of course, you're also working with individuals from staffing and pricing or finance, and those are huge components of these proposals as well. And sometimes you do get the opportunity for debriefs, whether you win or lost, to see what you can do better for next time, what really resonated with the government. So that is certainly useful, but a lot of it is really extensive prep work and trying to figure out what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, how can we emphasize our strengths, how can we mitigate our weaknesses, what are our competitors going to do, what will their approach most likely look like, how can we be competitive in the face of that. So a lot of the they're called capture activities, that's hugely important for each of these bids. And then, as I mentioned, just following up and trying to do retrospectives and lessons learned to see how you can progressively improve those proposals in the future.
Interesting, very interesting. Now, I'm sure you must be reading quite a lot of resources, either through web or through books. So can you share some documentation related resource that you have consumed recently?
Sure. So two organizations that I really rely on are Shipley Associates and the Association of Proposal Management Professionals. Both of those put out really great materials specifically related to proposal writing. They have, each of them have a body of knowledge, which is incredibly useful. And then on a broader basis, I also work a lot with the Society for Technical Communication, STC, just to make sure that I'm still building on the foundational skills of technical writing and technical communication.
Nice, very nice. So other question I ask is, what is that one word that comes to your mind when I say documentation?
For me, I think the word would be possibilities, because there's just, as I mentioned before, technical writing as a field is so broad, proposal writing as a field is so broad. And so there's really no limit to what you can accomplish with it and what you can do for it. So the possibilities are really endless with it, which is just such an exciting prospect.
Possibilities. Nice. My last question to you is, what is that one piece of documentation related advice you would give to your 20-year-old self?
I would probably advise myself to explore more in terms of documentation, because there's so many facets of technical communication and different types of documentation that most people aren't even aware are out there, myself included. You go to college and of course they introduce you to different types of documentation, and as you progress through life, you encounter plenty of types of documentation, but you really don't know what you don't know. You don't understand what's out there until you go and look and try and find those gaps in knowledge. And it's just truly amazing, how many different types of documentation are out there and how many different jobs involve documentation or working with documentation. And I wish I could have been able to encourage my younger self to go out there and explore all of that.
Great. So thank you so much, Mickella, for your time. And it's really interesting to see this flavor of technical documentation. And I'm sure I learned something new today. And I wish you all the very best for any projects that you're taking in the coming days.
Thank you so much. It's been absolutely great being here. Thank you again for reaching out to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Mickella. Take care.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Knowledgebase Ninjas podcast. Please head to iTunes, rate, and provide honest feedback on the podcast. See you next week.